The late afternoon sun bathed the park in golden warmth as I watched Lily toddle toward the sandbox, her small fingers clutching her favorite plush rabbit. The swings creaked nearby, laughter floated in the air, and for a moment everything felt safe, peaceful. I sat on the bench just a few feet away, laptop bag beside me, coffee in hand, dressed not in my usual blazer and heels but jeans and a soft tee. No one here knew I was a federal prosecutor. Today I was just Mum. Lily, my 4-year-old daughter, was the embodiment of gentleness. She hadn't spoken a word in over a year. The doctors called it selective mutism, a trauma response. I called it heartbreaking. Something had happened at her old daycare. Something no one admitted, no one saw, or chose not to. She'd shut down one day, stopped talking, and I'd spent the last 12 months trying to teach her that the world was still safe. And on days like this, I almost believed it myself. She knelt in the sand, her tiny hands sifting through the grains with wonder. A little boy nearby offered her a red plastic shovel, and for the first time that week, I saw her smile. A soft, hopeful curve of her lips. It warmed my chest. I waved at her and she waved back. A woman with sharp sunglasses and a scowl pushed a double stroller nearby. Her movements were sharp, jerky, impatient. I noticed her only because her voice grated above the others, snapping at her kids, muttering about germs and other people's children. I watched her glance toward Lily with a wrinkle in her brow. I didn't think much of it, not at first. My phone buzzed. A quick call from a colleague about an upcoming deposition. I hesitated, glanced at Lily, still in her world of sand and sunshine, then stepped a few feet away, keeping her in view. I took the call with one ear tilted toward the sandbox, my eyes darting between documents and my daughter. In hindsight, it wasn't long, maybe 5 minutes, but sometimes all it takes is one. When I turned around, I no longer saw Lily's smile, only the empty shovel on the ground, and Karen, striding toward her. Something in my stomach went cold. Karen's presence hit like a slap of cold water. She marched across the playground in beige wedges, her jaw tight, lips pursed like she'd sucked a lemon. Her sunglasses hid her eyes, but her body language shouted everything, irritated, impatient, on edge. Her son, maybe the same age as Lily, trailed behind, whining about wanting his shovel back. I stepped off the call mid-sentence when I saw Karen zeroing in. By the time I reached them, she was already yanking the red shovel from Lily's hands, not gently. My daughter stumbled backward into the sand, blinking up at her in confusion, still too stunned to cry. Karen snapped something about kids needing to learn to share, and turned on her heel like she'd done the world a favor. "Excuse me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She wasn't trying to take it. He gave it to her. Karen stopped, tilted her head slowly, and pulled down her sunglasses to reveal a pair of cold, calculating eyes. "She didn't ask," she snapped. "He only lent it. She doesn't get to keep other people's things." I stepped between them, crouched down and picked Lily up. My daughter clung to me, burying her face in my shoulder. "She doesn't speak," I said calmly. "She's mute. If you'd been patient." "Mute?" Karen cut in with a mocking laugh. "So, she's broken and wild. Great combo." Her voice dripped sarcasm, her eyes daring me to challenge her. I stared at her, momentarily speechless, not from shock. I'd heard worse in courtrooms, but from disbelief that someone could show this kind of cruelty to a child, especially one as harmless as Lily. I held my daughter tighter. Karen wasn't done. She muttered under her breath, loud enough to be heard, "Freaks shouldn't be on public playgrounds if they can't behave." Other parents were starting to glance our way. A father near the monkey bars frowned. A mother pulled her child closer. Karen didn't notice or didn't care. I chose silence for now, not because I was afraid, but because I knew my silence scared people more. Karen strutted back to her bench, victorious in her own mind. But something inside me whispered, "This isn't over." And it wasn't. I tried to shake it off. The sting of her words lingered, but I told myself Lily didn't fully understand. She was resilient, stronger than people realized. We moved to the other side of the playground, near a shaded bench under the big oak tree. I wiped the sand from her legs, gave her a juice box, and unwrapped the little cheese crackers she loved. Her fingers nibbled at them slowly, head resting on my lap. I checked my watch. just enough time to let her play before heading home for dinner. My phone buzzed again. A text from my colleague asking for a quick update on tomorrow's hearing. I hesitated, glancing at Lily. She was sitting quietly on the bench now, her rabbit tucked beneath her arm, cheeks flushed but calm. I stood and stepped a few feet away, still within sight, always within reach. The conversation was routine, nothing urgent. I kept one eye on Lily the entire time. She slid down from the bench and began tracing circles in the dirt with a stick. The afternoon breeze tousled her hair, and a sense of calm returned to my chest. She looked okay, she looked safe. But something was off. Subtle, a ripple in the air. Karen hadn't left. She was pacing again, talking loudly on her phone, her child whining behind her. She kept looking our way. At first, I thought it was just more posturing, the kind of mean girl energy that fades once they feel seen. But this was something colder. I shortened the call and tucked the phone into my back pocket. As I started walking back, a gut-deep discomfort pressed at my spine. Lily was still tracing lines in the dirt, but Karen was closer now, too close. She was standing just a few feet behind my daughter, her expression unreadable beneath those sunglasses. "Hey," I called out, my voice sharp. Karen didn't turn. Instead, she stepped forward. Her hand moved quickly, something black flashing from her tote bag. I broke into a run, and that's when I heard it. A high-pitched, sharp yelp. Not a word. Not a cry. Just pain, pure and raw. Lily collapsed onto her knees, clutching her arm. Karen stood over her with a black leather belt in her hand. I sprinted the last few feet, my heart in my throat. And I knew. She had just hurt my child. I reached them in seconds, but it felt like moving through water. The world slowed, narrowed, collapsed into the horrifying sight before me. Lily was on the ground, curled into herself, her small hands trembling as she clutched her upper arm. Her rabbit lay discarded in the dirt. A red mark, raw, fresh, angry, spanned across her pale skin. My breath caught in my throat. Karen stood over her, belt still dangling from her hand, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Her face was twisted, flushed with rage. She didn't even flinch when I shoved myself between her and Lily. I dropped to my knees, pulling my daughter into my arms. Lily didn't cry, she didn't make a sound. But her body shook uncontrollably, her little chest heaving as her eyes widened in terror. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I said, my voice low and seething. Karen crossed her arms and scoffed. "She went after my son, tried to scratch him or bite him or something. I was just teaching her a lesson. You should be thanking me. Someone has to discipline these little monsters." "She's 4, I hissed, "and she didn't touch your son. I was watching the entire time." Karen didn't care. She waved a hand dismissively as if I were the problem, as if my mute daughter deserved what just happened. Around us, the playground had gone silent. The swings were still, the laughter had died. A few parents stood frozen, unsure of what they'd just witnessed. Some were already pulling their children away, whispering, murmuring in disbelief. I turned to them. "Did anyone see what she just did? She struck my daughter with a belt." No one moved at first. And then a woman stepped forward. "I saw it," she said softly. "She hit her. That child didn't do anything." Karen turned to her, face hardening. "Mind your business." I held Lily tighter, shielding her from the madness. Her breathing was shallow now, eyes unfocused. My hands ran over her back gently, trying to soothe the silent terror radiating from her body. Karen tossed the belt back into her bag like it was just another toy, then adjusted her sunglasses with infuriating calm. Maybe next time she'll think twice before grabbing things that don't belong to her. I stood up slowly, one arm still around Lily. My voice was steady now, cold as ice. "You just made the worst mistake of your life." Karen's eyes narrowed as she stepped forward again, emboldened by some twisted confidence that only people like her seemed to possess. She squared her shoulders, jutting her chin out like she was ready for a fight, but all I saw was a woman spiraling, feeding on her own delusions. "You people think you can do whatever you want," she spat, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Come in here with your broken kids and expect the world to bend over backward. If your daughter can't even speak, maybe she shouldn't be around normal children." The words hit like a slap. A hush fell over the playground. I didn't move, didn't react, but inside, a storm had begun to swirl. I glanced around and caught the eyes of other parents. Some looked horrified, others just stunned. A father beside the slide had started filming with his phone, quietly, carefully. Karen didn't notice. She went near my son without permission, Karen continued, her voice rising. He doesn't like to be touched. What if she has something? She could have bit him. You think that's okay? You think I'm just going to let your little mute brat hurt my child and do nothing? She didn't touch your son, I said firmly, my jaw clenched. You weren't even watching, she snapped. Typical. You're too busy being whatever it is you are, while the rest of us try to raise decent kids, not like her. She pointed at Lily, who was now tucked against my shoulder, face hidden, body trembling. She's not right. You should have put her in a special school or something. I took a breath, steadying myself. You assaulted a child in public, and you're doubling down. Karen laughed. Please, like anyone's going to care. You're just another soft mum trying to get attention. I've dealt with people like you before. You make threats, cry wolf, but nothing ever happens. My eyes didn't leave hers. You really don't know who I am, do you? She rolled her eyes. Oh, don't tell me you're someone important. What, a lawyer? PTA president? I don't care. Your kid is a liability, and I did what any good parent would do. Silence settled between us like smoke after a fire. Then I guess it's time someone showed you what happens to bad ones, I said quietly. Karen smirked, turned away, and strutted off, still thinking she'd won. She had no idea what was coming. I sat with Lily on the bench beneath the oak tree, her tiny form curled into mine, her cheek resting on my chest. She hadn't made a sound since the belt struck her, but her silence was louder than any scream. I stroked her hair slowly, breathing deeply, keeping my fury buried beneath a mask of calm. Rage wouldn't help her. Precision would. I slipped my phone out of my pocket and texted Olivia Carson, a friend of mine in Child Protective Services. Just one sentence. Need you at Parkside Playground. Child assault. Witnesses present. No details. She knew the code. Olivia was efficient, sharp, and above all, someone who believed in justice where it mattered most, on the ground. Then I began gathering evidence. I walked to the woman who'd spoken up earlier. She was still standing near the sandbox, arms crossed tightly. Her name was Dana. I asked gently if she would be willing to provide a statement. She nodded and handed me her contact information without hesitation. The father who had filmed Karen's rant handed me his phone. I watched the video in silence. It captured everything: the belt, the yelling, Karen's hate-soaked tirade, the shaking form of my daughter. I thanked him and airdropped the footage to my device, all while Karen lounged on the other side of the park, talking on her phone like she hadn't just crossed every line a human could. She didn't glance our way again. She assumed it was over. That the silence of a mute child meant no story would be told. That a mother dressed in jeans and sneakers was no threat. She had no idea I spent my days dissecting cases like this, holding monsters accountable, watching them crumble under the weight of truth. Lily stirred slightly, her fingers clenching my shirt. I kissed the top of her head and whispered, "You're safe now, baby." She didn't respond, but her grip loosened just enough to let me breathe again. I didn't call the police yet. No, that would come later. With evidence, with statements, with the full weight of the law behind it. I looked at Karen one last time. Her back was turned, phone to her ear, sunglasses shielding a face full of arrogance, and I smiled, slow and deliberate, because she had no clue she had just picked a fight with a federal prosecutor. The next morning, the sky was overcast, heavy with the weight of unfinished business. While most of the city moved on from yesterday like nothing had happened, I hadn't slept. Not because I was unsure of what to do. No, I knew exactly what needed to happen. I'd just been waiting for the right moment to let the hammer fall. By 9 a.m., a formal complaint had been filed with the local precinct. I included the video footage, photographs of Lily's bruises, written witness statements from Dana and 2 others, plus a transcript of Karen's unhinged rant. I didn't need to embellish a thing. Her words alone painted her as someone unstable, dangerous, and unapologetic. What she did wasn't just a simple assault. It was aggravated, it was hateful, and most damning of all, It was against a vulnerable minor. I didn't handle the case personally. That would be unethical, but I didn't have to. My reputation within the office carried enough weight to ensure it landed in capable hands. Assistant District Attorney Mark Whitaker took it. Young, brilliant, and relentless in court. He didn't flinch when I laid out the facts. He only asked one question. How fast do you want this moving? Yesterday, I said. By noon, Karen was served. She opened her door in a robe, sipping coffee, probably still relishing the image of herself as some brave disciplinarian standing up to the world. Her smirk faded the second she saw the court officer. The documents named her as the defendant in a case involving child endangerment, physical assault on a minor, and hate crime enhancement due to the verbal abuse surrounding Lily's disability. From that moment, the clock began ticking. I spent the rest of the day with Lily, taking her to her favorite bookstore, letting her pick out new paints. She didn't speak, but she clung to me differently, less out of fear, more out of need, and I held her, silently promising that I would never let the world convince her that her quiet voice didn't matter. Karen had underestimated two people that day, the little girl she thought was too weak to fight back, and the mother who fights for a living. The courtroom buzzed with a low murmur as Karen walked in, dressed in a stiff blazer that still couldn't mask her arrogance. She scanned the room, tossing her over-processed hair, then paused when she saw me sitting quietly in the back row. Her smirk twitched, faltered. She had finally begun to understand this wasn't going away. The judge entered, and the room rose. Karen's attorney, a budget hire by the looks of him, stood next to her, already sweating. On the prosecution side, ADA Mark Whitaker flipped through his notes with the calm confidence of someone holding a loaded deck. The charges were read aloud: assault of a minor, child endangerment, and hate crime enhancement. Karen scoffed audibly. The judge shot her a glare that silenced the room. Testimonies began. Dana was the first to speak. Her voice trembled at first, but grew steady as she recounted exactly what she saw. Then came the father with the video. He'd printed stills of Karen raising the belt. His voice never wavered. Finally, Olivia Carson took the stand to explain the psychological trauma such an incident could have on a child, especially a non-verbal one. Her words hung in the air like a gavel before the verdict. Karen's defense tried to twist the narrative, claimed her son had been threatened, that she acted to protect him, that she used only light discipline. But the footage betrayed her. The mark on Lily's arm, the screaming, the slurs, all of it collided in front of 12 very uncomfortable jurors. The prosecution's final statement was short and devastating. This wasn't just a loss of temper. This was targeted violence against a child who could not scream, could not speak, could not defend herself, and the defendant knew it. Karen finally glanced back at me. There was no smugness left, only panic. I didn't look away. I held her gaze, silently daring her to say again that my daughter was a liability. When the judge called for a recess before sentencing, Karen's lawyer leaned toward her, whispering urgently. Her hands trembled. She finally understood who I was. Not just a mother, not just a quiet face in the crowd, but the woman who made sure people like her never walked away clean. The courtroom reconvened after lunch, quieter now, like the air itself had settled into a state of waiting. Karen sat stiffly beside her attorney, no longer posturing. Her mascara was smudged just beneath her eyes, a detail I might have pitied under different circumstances. But not today, not after what she did. The judge cleared his throat and began. He didn't rush. He spoke with deliberate gravity, as if each word was a weight being placed on a scale. He acknowledged the evidence, the testimonies, the video footage. He cited her lack of remorse, her mocking of a disabled child, her continued insistence that she'd done nothing wrong. "Ms. Carpenter," he said, "your behavior was not only unlawful, it was inhumane. You targeted a defenseless child and justified your violence with bigotry. This court finds you guilty on all counts." Karen's mouth parted slightly, a breath catching in her throat. Her attorney closed his eyes, already bracing for what was next. "You are hereby sentenced to 2 years in county jail, followed by 18 months of supervised probation. You will also complete a mandatory psychological evaluation and participate in a court-ordered empathy training program. And let me be clear, any violation of this order will result in a longer sentence." There was no outburst, no shouting, just silence, cold and final. Karen sat frozen, absorbing the reality she'd never imagined would find her. She looked over her shoulder again, her eyes landing on me. I gave her nothing. No nod, no satisfaction, just the same stillness I carried into every courtroom. The bailiff approached to take her into custody. She stood on shaky legs, wrists trembling as they were cuffed. Her face crumbled for the first time, but it was too late. The damage had been done. She left the room not as a misunderstood parent, but as a woman held accountable. I sat there for a moment longer after she was gone, breathing deeply, letting the weight of justice settle. Then I stood and turned to leave. At the exit, I paused. The courthouse doors opened into the afternoon light, warm and golden. I stepped outside and saw Lily waiting with Olivia on the bench. She looked up at me with wide, quiet eyes, and I knew she was safe again. It was a week later when the first real sign came. We were sitting on the living room floor, the late sun filtering through the curtains in soft gold. Lily had spread out her paints, carefully dipping her brush into the blues and purples, her tongue peeking from the corner of her mouth in focused silence. She hadn't spoken since the day Karen struck her, not even a hum. But her colours told me everything. She was healing in her own way. I watched her quietly, sipping tea, pretending not to notice as she glanced up at me every few minutes. Her latest painting was a swirl of soft pastels, blue skies, a heart, and two stick figures, one small, one tall, holding the other's hand. She pointed to the taller figure, then to me. I smiled and tapped my chest. "That's Mama," I said gently. She nodded, then pointed to the smaller one. "Me," she whispered. I froze. The word was so faint I almost thought I imagined it. But her lips had moved. Her voice, quiet, raspy from disuse, was real. I set down my mug, trying not to startle her. My eyes welled with tears I didn't want to blink away. "You said something," I whispered back, kneeling beside her. "Lily, baby, you spoke." She looked up at me, uncertain, like she wasn't sure if she'd done something wrong. Her hands trembled slightly. I took them into mine. "You're safe," I told her. "No one will ever hurt you again, not while I'm here." She looked at the painting again, then back at me, and with a small, brave breath whispered, "Thank you, Mama." This time the tears came freely. I pulled her into my arms, holding her as tightly as I dared. Her little voice had returned, fragile but alive, and it was the most powerful sound I'd ever heard. Not because of the words themselves, but because of everything they carried, trust, hope, and a flicker of light that cruelty had failed to extinguish. Outside, the world still spun in its usual chaos. But inside our little living room, in the quiet presence of paintbrushes and healing hearts, my daughter found her voice again. And this time, no one would silence her.